Okay, second's out, round two. Here's the other one. Both of these were from last year's paper, actually. Yeah. Shortage chef causing crisis for UK curry restaurants. The idea is this is something to do with monopolistic competition. Part A has generally caused chaos, and it did in the exam. Explain using diagrams the reason that profit maximising firms or a profit maximising firm might increase their prices. Well, the reality is that you're only in narrow economic theory terms, you're only going to increase your price if there is a good reason for that. Yeah. So other things being equal, the firm is already profit maximising. That's your point. Yeah. So if you look at monopolistic competition, saying, well, look, why would you increase your price? If you're already profit maximising. Let's suppose, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter whether we're in short run or long run equilibrium. Let's suppose just so that we can show the examiner that we know that monopolistic competition isn't monopoly. Let's suppose we do something like that. Then what we're saying then is that the firm is maximising its profits, outputs Q1, and price is P1. So why the hell would you change price? And the answer is you wouldn't, unless something happens either to MR or to MC. In other words, if the profit maximising output changes, then under those circumstances, so too will the profit maximising price. The easier one is, so let's suppose that, the question alludes to the idea that variable costs are increasing, but let's suppose instead initially that demand rises, so demand rises to D2 equals AR2, and therefore MR goes with it. So then we have MR2 there. What we can now see is that MC equals MR here at Q2, and as a result, the profit maximising price rises to P2. So there's a new equilibrium where MC equals MR. The firm is now making, there's going to be some sort of short-run equilibrium. The firm's now making, abnormal profit, but that's not the important point. The point is, that because the increase in demand and the increase in MR, this has driven the price up, from P1 to P2. And if you can explain that, then you're doing pretty well, I didn't mark this paper, but you'd have got. I'd be surprised if you hadn't got, a very significant proportion of the marks, for being able to do that. Because, as I say, the general outcome was carnage for this one. On the other hand, let's suppose that there's an increase in variable costs. This one's quite a hard one to show. Again, if we start the firm in some form of long-run equilibrium, there's D equals AR. And there's MR, that's twice distance. Cuts kind of slightly, so it hasn't started well. We'll have, there's no marks for art. And then we'll have marginal cost needs to cross there, and also go through the, minimum point like that. So again, the firm's profit maximising output is Q1, price is P1. So let's suppose that there's an increase in marginal cost. That's a variable cost, and therefore it'll increase average cost as well. So we'll end up, I don't know. So this is a very good pen. Just rubbish pen. So. That's not much better. MC2, that's what you get for not checking in advance. And then AC will keep it, again, it's going to be above the original, that's a bit better. It'll keep it above the original average cost curve. Minimum point's going to be where it cuts marginal costs, and then it goes up like that. AC2, let's make that a bit more visible. So there's MC2. So again, we'll say, well, where is the profit maximum out? Where is the profit maximising output now? What's happened is that the profit maximising output has fallen, from Q1 to Q2, where MC equals MR. If you stayed at the original output, now MC would be over MR, above MR for those units, and it would be reducing profit. But as a result, because output's lower, the profit maximising price is higher at P2. So tough, tough, but actually quite compact. Yeah, if you understand your stuff, you could probably do that in a relatively short amount of time. Yeah, you got your 10 out of 10, job done. Obviously, you'd need to give an example of why it is that demand was shifting to the right in the first case and why it is that marginal costs are increasing, although they tell you that in the stem, or at least they allude to this idea that there's some sort of increase in marginal costs, so food prices, something along those lines. So that's that one. So to say, it's one that kind of, some people did very, very well. A lot more people did very, very badly on that one. The second part then is saying, to what extent is monopolistic competition a more desirable market structure than perfect competition? And desirable, therefore, desirable is quite an open-ended, concept. And for me, I normally look at things in terms of the impact on efficiency, the impact on consumers, and sometimes the impact on the economy as a whole. But definitely what we should be doing is we should be looking at efficiency, and we should be comparing perfect competition with monopolistic competition. And what we know is that the two key efficiencies, we know that perfect competition is both allocatively efficient and productively efficient, because firms are forced to respond to the needs of consumers, and the level of competition is so high, that they have to keep prices down at their lowest level. So I start off by saying, well, let's look at perfect competition. Let's suppose this is the industry diagram, and we've got supply equals marginal cost. We've got demand there. That's the equilibrium price. We know that demand, from microeconomic theory, we know that demand is marginal utility. So we know that the industry in perfect competition is allocatively efficient. Community surplus is maximised. Price equals marginal cost. But the key is that for all of these units, that's the extra benefit, that's the extra cost, and therefore community surplus is maximised. Societal welfare is maximised because we produce all the units where the extra benefit is greater than the extra cost. For the firm, likewise, in long run equilibrium, so that's demand, which we'll have to go now, I always get that wrong. That's D, which is on average the revenue that it gets, and it's the extra revenue the firm gets, because it can sell each unit for the same price, and we know that if it increases price, demand falls to zero. We know that in long run equilibrium, price has been driven down, to the minimum point of the average cost curve, because that's the only way that firms can survive in such a competitive market structure, and therefore, it's also true that in perfect competition, the firm in the long run should be productively efficient. In the short run, that might not be true. So we know that suppose there had been a big increase in demand to D2, driving price up to P2, the market's still allocatively efficient, but now because MR has shifted up to MR2, AR2, the profit maximising output rises from Q1 to Q2, and in the short run, the firm is no longer productively efficient, because competition has been reduced by the fact that demand's gone up and new firms haven't entered yet. Average cost still isn't its minimum point. Nevertheless, in the long run, what we know is that prices are driven down to the minimum point of the average cost curve. So perfect competition is both allocatively and productively efficient. And what we now want to do is to contrast that with monopolistic competition. And we know that monopolistic competition will be neither of these. The firm has price-setting power. It doesn't compete only on the basis of price. Therefore, prices aren't driven down to the minimum point of the average cost curve, and it doesn't have to respond exactly to consumers' needs. It doesn't have to. So therefore, the market's going to get distorted. Firms have some small degree of kind of monopoly power over their own brand, their own product, and so on. So what happens then is that in monopolistic competition, it's like I've drawn this diagram a lot of times. We produce it profit maximising output there, Q1, there we're making normal profit in the long run. and as a result, the firm's just making normal profit, and that's because in monopolistic competition there are no barriers to entry in the long run either. And one of the comparisons you can make is in terms of dynamic efficiency. You can say that in both perfect competition and monopolistic competition, there are no abnormal profits in the long run, and therefore dynamic efficiency is unlikely because there are no surplus profits to reinvest. And likewise, they were pretty competitive market structures, so it would be unlikely to find X inefficiency, although if you did, it would be more likely in monopolistic than in perfect competition. But again, the absence of barriers to entry should prevent too much X inefficiency. The point, though, is that we can see two things. Firstly, we're no longer operating at the minimum point of the average cost curve. So at the minimum point of the average cost curve, there costs would be C star or something. Whereas in equilibrium, average cost equals average revenue at C1 P1. So effectively, each unit has waste of W. We're producing each unit with more resources than it really needs, and therefore that's inefficient. Secondly, we can see that in perfect competition, that sort of supply curve, the allocative, so that would be the productively efficient price. Point with the equilibrium would be about there. So the productively efficient output would be there. Allocative efficiency is there where AR equals MC or P equals MC, which would be about there. Hello. What? Yes. What are you doing? I'm making a video, Tom. Talk to Verity. Here you go. So yes, hello everyone. So therefore, the point is that we have no longer maximised welfare. The allocative efficient output's there. We've only produced there. So we could have had overall welfare of that amount, but we don't. We stop short. So we do get welfare of that much there, and we fail to get as much there as we could do. So there's welfare loss. So that would be my starting point on the essay. Is to say, well, to what extent is it efficient? And then I think about the benefits to the consumer. We've already seen this idea that prices are probably going to be higher in monopolistic competition. And therefore there's going to be a loss of consumer surplus. And you could revisit the diagrams that you've already drawn to show that. We should then think about products. So what we know is that in perfect competition, part of the assumptions are all products are identical or homogeneous. So therefore the world is very dull. It's a grey, boring, flat world. Whereas in monopolistic competition, as the question alludes to, we got this idea of something like restaurants or something. So the point is that I do have some sort of choice. Not all restaurants are the same, and therefore we could argue that consumers are better off because their needs are being more precisely met. So in monopolistic competition, there is product differentiation, and therefore you're going to get something that's a bit closer to what you really want. So from a desirability point of view, we can then start. We can explore that idea of the extent to which consumers do or don't prefer either. Maybe we prefer actually to pay a slightly higher price, because we're getting better value for money in some sense. Oh, kitchen! The cat's just attacked my daughter. Don't go out then. You're right. No, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'll just finish this off. I can see you in a minute. Let's all go here. What was I talking about? So from the consumer's point of view, we might prefer to pay a bit extra to have some sort of meaningful choice. So in efficiency terms, generally speaking, we would think that monopolistic competition is less efficient. From the consumer's perspective, a lot will depend really, but there's some sense in which there's a trade-off between price and genuine choice, something along those lines. From the economy as a whole, difficult to say, really. And likewise from suppliers. In fact, what you might want to do is to make the point that actually, in some ways, the market structures aren't that dissimilar. They all have lots and lots of small firms, so there's not much in the way of economies of scale. That they're unlikely to be dynamically efficient. And from the perspective of the economy as a whole, generally neither of those is particularly good news in terms of increasing growth and promoting exports. And something like oligopoly, or some sort of contestable or competitive oligopoly, would probably be better. So in conclusion, broadly speaking, perfect competition is more efficient. Not necessarily in the short run, but certainly in the long run. Monopolistic competition, other things being equal, probably is better from the point of view of the consumer. But the key is make sure you get your technical stuff right. If you do, you'll do well on that. So. Right then, that's the end of that chaos, and I'll see you next week.